Now, we need to talk about this woke bishop who went on a wild activist rant during a church service for Donald Trump. Here's a reminder of what happened, and I think that J.D. Vance's face really says it all.
I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives.
Now, this Bishop Mariann Edgar Budde has now gone on a press tour of America. Here she is on The View, who are, unsurprisingly, gushing over her.
You seem to have more fearlessness than anyone in Congress right now, ma'am.
You were so gentle, you were so respectful, you were very demure and very mindful.
A lot of people, as I said, in our country right now are really scared. I wanted to take the opportunity in the context of that service for unity to say we need to treat everyone with dignity, and we need to be merciful. I was trying to counter the narrative that is so divisive and polarizing.
Douglas, she's out there now talking about mercy and understanding, yet couldn't wait to do all these press interviews. What do you make of what she did at that service and how she's gone about it since?
Well, I thought it was completely disgraceful and a great example of where the Episcopalian Church has gone in recent years. There was nothing really about God in this. I mean, you would have thought that she'd have taken the opportunity to talk about God in some way. She didn't. She just had a set of boring Democrat left-wing talking points. First of all, by the way, I mean, the obscenity of talking about trans children. There's no such thing as a trans child. No child is just born in the wrong body. And if people are fearful, as she said, which I'm really not sure they are, but if they were fearful, then it's because of people like this balmy bishop who go around claiming that Donald Trump is going to come and kill their trans children or whatever. I mean, you know, people have to be indoctrinated into that kind of fear. And people like her have perhaps managed to do that to some of their would-be flock. It's just one of those occasions, though, when, you know, you remember what has gone wrong with a large segment of the church. It's not just the Episcopalian Church. But, you know, this is a moment, and it doesn't happen that often in America any more than Australia or Britain. This is a moment for the church to shine, you know, and actually to talk about God, to talk about Jesus, to talk about the Christian faith, for instance. This would seem like prime time to do that. But only a banal bishop like this thinks that instead of talking about God, they should do their boring talking points, which if anyone wants to see, they can get on The View any day. It's just a real disgrace that somebody like her is in that position. And as I say, a demonstration of the church's failing, that they would have just this third-rate political hack when they could have had somebody who was talking about God and representing God on earth. And I can think of no one further away from that position than her. I'm sure she'll enjoy her 2 or 3 days of being lauded for her incredible bravery. And after that, I hope she disappears into the oblivion from which she came.
Oh, look, don't we all? That would be great. And Donald Trump overnight's also demanded a public apology. He's posted to Truth Social saying the so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service on Tuesday morning was a radical left hardline Trump hater. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. Douglas, you know, Trump is right here. What business did she have? And it goes to what you alluded to before, turning what was meant to be a great church service into a political one.
It's so strange. I mean, and, you know, just to demonstrate, you know, that there should be such a thing as consistency, I wouldn't have wanted to hear a sermon from a very right-wing bishop explaining how tough we should be on illegal migrants either. I mean, she said we've got to have mercy on illegal migrants and how scared they are. And I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, you can just do that forever. But the counterpart is you could just talk about all the crimes that some illegal migrants have committed. But again, who wants to hear that from a pulpit? You can hear that in some of the news if you want. You can hear it on X. You can see it on X. You can see it on YouTube. You can see it on in the newspapers. You can read the New York Post, and you can read the crimes that have been committed by illegal migrants. But once you step into church, you would hope that you would get something other than the day's news and something about the eternal and the divine and the sublime. And so you know, just the heart sinks. One of the things I've said for years is that the response to the mad left-wing infiltration of almost every institution in our societies should not be countered, actually, by the right-wing infiltration of the churches or music or anything else. It should be the depoliticization of the non-political world. You know, there have been in recent years ever fewer spaces, to use one of the left's favorite phrases, ever fewer spaces in which you can actually escape from politics, because the left has pushed politics into everything. I hope that this is just another reminder to conservatives and liberals and others alike. We need spaces that are not politicized, where you're not going to get a sermon literally in the church and non-literally anywhere else, where we can just focus on other things as well. And as I say, I mean, that should really be the conservative response, to say, strip the politics out.
Absolutely, and this is exactly why Donald Trump's been elected, because people are sick of this absolute nonsense. Now, you mentioned illegal migrants there, and it started already. More than 300 illegal migrants have been arrested by ICE during raids in and around sanctuary cities across the US. This includes sex offenders and other violent criminals. Douglas, this is just the beginning of what clearly is a massive task ahead for ICE and Border Czar Tom Homan. But how good is it to see law and order slowly and finally being restored?
Well, as I've said for many years, if you don't have a border, you don't really have a country, or at least you won't have a country very soon. The way in which illegal migration has been encouraged in recent years, not just in America, but of course in Britain, Europe, and elsewhere, has been really shocking. It has undermined the fabric of these societies, and it rewards the illegality at the first point. Many people, like that Barmy Bishop, will be thinking about, you know, these people saying they're not all these illegal migrants are criminals. That's true with the fact that obviously not all of them have raped and murdered people since entering the US illegally. But all of them have broken the law by entering the US illegally. And meantime, by the way, you know, this is another of those great things that undermines one of the central fabrics of a society is, you know, legal migration is hard. Getting asylum, actually, for legitimate reasons is hard. And the fact that at the same time as that reality exists, you just have this other world where anyone who just breaks the law is allowed to do so, is just something that has massively undermined the United States of America, as with other developed democracies. It is a huge task ahead for the Trump administration. There's no doubt about that. And they are going to be fought against by Democrat governments in sanctuary cities, Democrat authorities in sanctuary cities like New York and like, you know, cities in California. And we'll just see what happens. But I think that one very important thing about this is it's not just that America and the American voters who voted in Donald Trump are watching. I think the world is watching, because countries like Italy, Spain, France, and others that have millions of illegal migrants in their countries that they have totally failed to deport. Britain is another example. More than 1 million illegal migrants in the UK. Total failure of the government, total failure of the state to enforce the border laws. If Donald Trump can do this in America, then maybe there's a blueprint for other countries saying, we are fair-minded countries. We're good countries, which is why so many people want to come to the developed world. There must be something we're doing right. But we're mad if we think we can just have open borders and anyone in the world can walk in. So the American voters will be watching Trump, but my prediction is that governments across Europe and elsewhere will also be watching very carefully and hoping that he succeeds and that they can follow.
Absolutely, and hopefully he sets that standard. Now, I want to ask you about the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. We've already seen the first of some of the hostages being released. But Douglas, in your view, will this really ever truly end this war?
Well, it's very early to say. My expectation is no. I'm extremely pleased for the hostage families whose daughters were released. 3 women were released, of course, at the weekend. There has been an awful lot of praise of countries like Qatar in particular for helping to effect this release. There are still many scores of hostages in Gaza, an international array of hostages in Gaza who were stolen, kidnapped from their loved ones on October the 7th. And Hamas, in its unbelievable necrophilic style, is also holding on to the bodies of murdered hostages. And the Israeli negotiators are having to deal with talking about how to get dead bodies back from Hamas's clutches, as well as hopefully as many living hostages as possible. I think there are just 2 things quickly I would say about this. The first is that whether or not the war ends really relies on Hamas. Hamas could have stopped this war, and indeed it could have not started it. And that would have been a good idea, wouldn't it? But there's one other corner which does have to be highlighted, which is the role of Qatar. Qatar is one of the funders and hosts of Hamas. And it is galling to some of us to watch the praise being dished out to Qatar and the Emir at the moment. In my view, a rather perhaps old-fashioned and niche one at the moment, is that if you try to burn down your neighbor's house, then if you provide a fire extinguisher 15 months later, you shouldn't be enormously overpraised for your actions. And that's the situation that Qatar is in. They should be made to give all of the hostages back. None of the hostages should have been in Gaza in the first place. They were stolen, and it's high time that all of them were given back. And I hope the Trump administration will make it clear that that is its priority. So far, they've been very strong on that, but it requires regional partners to do their bit and not to play this double-dealing game that countries like Qatar have.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on as always. Douglas Murray, really good to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining me on the show this evening.
It's a great pleasure as always. Thank you.